He's been cast as the villain for centuries, a fiery tyrant with horns, ruling over the damned from a throne of bones, cloaked in smoke and vengeance. But that's not the Hades the Greeks knew. He wasn't evil or cruel. He didn't burn sinners or torment souls. Those jobs belonged to others, to the Furies, to the judges of the dead, to the more shadowy figures of the underworld. Hades simply ruled, not with wrath or pride, but with order and silence. He didn't seek worship or meddle in mortal affairs. He wasn't loved, but he was respected. Feared as well, but only because death itself is feared. The end is always terrifying, no matter how gently it arrives. He was the first to fall into darkness when the cosmos was divided, and he embraced it. Rather than seeing it as a punishment, he saw it as a necessity. While others chased glory and power, he took the one realm no one else wanted and gave it structure. This is the story of Hades, the god of the dead and the lord of the underworld. Before the world knew Olympus, it belonged to the Titans, ancient forces that ruled the cosmos in a time when chaos and power went hand in hand. Among them stood Cronus, the Titan of time, and Rhea, his queen. It was from them that the Olympians were born. Hades was their fourth child, but Cronus, gripped by fear of a prophecy that one of his children would one day overthrow him, swallowed each of them whole the moment they were born. Hades never saw the sky, never felt the earth beneath his feet, only darkness. Alongside his siblings, he remained trapped in the stomach of his father, silent and suspended in time. It wasn't until the birth of Zeus, the youngest, that things began to shift. Hidden away and raised in secret, Zeus returned when the time was right, and with the help of Metis, forced Cronus to disgorge his brothers and sisters. Hades emerged, fully grown and reborn into a world he had never truly seen. That experience, being devoured, buried, and then returned, shaped him in ways the myths never spell out but always imply. He knew confinement, he knew silence, and he would carry that with him forever. As the Olympians began to establish their place in the world, the time came for them to challenge the old order. The war that followed, the Titanomachy, would be long, brutal, and full of shifting alliances. Hades played a pivotal role in that war, but we'll come back to that later. For now, what matters is this. When the war ended, and the Titans were cast down, the world was divided. Zeus claimed the skies, Poseidon took the seas, and Hades was given dominion over the realm beneath the earth, the world of the dead. It wasn't a reward or a punishment. It was necessary, and so Hades descended. There were no cheers, no temples, no parades, only a throne in the dark and the weight of eternity. To understand Hades, you can't just look at the underworld. You have to look at his family, the gods who ruled the world above, the ones he rarely stood beside, and the one woman who stood beside him. His siblings were Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, a divine bloodline that spanned every corner of existence. Sky, sea, earth, hearth, marriage, harvest, and death. Each sibling carved out a realm or role that matched something essential. And Hades, whether by fate or lot, was the one tied to the end of all things. His relationship with Zeus and Poseidon was complicated. They weren't enemies, but they weren't close either. They ruled their own domains, and rarely did their paths cross. Zeus had the sky and the throne on Olympus. Poseidon held the sea, the storms, and the fury of earthquakes. Hades? He ruled the dead, and he ruled them alone. While his brothers often meddled in mortal lives, waged wars, and chased women across the earth, Hades remained in his realm. He didn't visit Olympus often. He wasn't part of the petty squabbles, the politics, the seductions, or the spectacles. He was removed, not because he was lesser, but because he simply didn't care for any of it. But if there was one bond that defined him, it was his connection to Persephone. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, which also made her Hades' niece. Their union wasn't born from a chance meeting or mutual flirtation. It was arranged in secret with the approval of Zeus and without the consent of Demeter or Persephone herself. But that's a story for another chapter. But what matters here is that Persephone didn't stay a prisoner. She became a queen, and in time, she would rule the underworld beside Hades as an equal. Not a side piece, not a shadow, but a queen in full. Hades was faithful to her, one of the only major male gods in Greek mythology who didn't have a string of lovers or illegitimate children scattered across the world. There are whispers about nymphs like Minthe and Leuce, fleeting relationships that never became more. But there was never a Hera to his Zeus, no dozens of affairs to unravel. Hades was many things, but he was never unfaithful. Outside of Olympus, Hades had a court of his own, not gods of joy and thunder, but beings of shadow and transition. There was Charon, the ferryman who carried souls across the river Styx, Thanatos, the personification of death, and his brother Hypnos, the god of sleep. The Erinyes, the Furies, who punished oathbreakers and crimes against kin, and Hecate, the torch-bearing goddess of magic and crossroads, who moved between realms and was one of the few deities welcome in his domain. These weren't allies of war. They were guardians of boundaries, like Hades himself. Each one represented a threshold between states. Life and death, sleep and wakefulness, crime and punishment, silence and speech. Hades didn't surround himself with flatterers or revelers. He kept company with those who understood what it meant to carry a burden alone. And maybe that's what set him apart. While the other gods ruled over life's pleasures, Hades ruled over its final truth. And he did it not with pride or cruelty, but with quiet conviction. Hades wasn't flashy. He didn't soar through the skies on a thundercloud like Zeus, or erupt from the sea with a trident in hand like Poseidon. He didn't need spectacle, because his presence alone carried weight. The ancient Greeks rarely depicted Hades in vivid detail, and that wasn't due to lack of imagination. It was fear. Saying his name aloud was thought to draw his attention, and calling upon him directly was seen as dangerous. Instead, they used titles, symbols, and subtle gestures. He was called Pluton, the wealth giver, not because he was generous, but because all precious metals, jewels, and resources of the earth lay beneath his feet. Every grave, every seed buried in soil, every coin dropped into the dirt, it all belonged to him. In art, when he was shown, Hades looked regal, not monstrous, not skeletal, not horned or aflame like modern pop culture would have you believe. He was often depicted as a stern, bearded man seated on a dark throne, his expression unreadable. He wore long robes, sometimes black, sometimes deep red, and beside him stood Persephone, the queen of the underworld, often the only source of warmth in the scene. By his side, you might find Cerberus, the three-headed hound that guarded the gates of the underworld, loyal, terrifying, and untamed by all except him. In his hands, he might hold a bident, a two-pronged staff resembling Poseidon's trident, but distinct, or a drinking horn, or even a cornucopia, symbolizing not only the wealth of the earth, but also the cycle of life, death, and renewal. But perhaps the most famous of his possessions was the Helm of Darkness, also called the Cap of Invisibility. Forged by the Cyclopes, this helmet rendered the wearer completely unseen. Hades used it in battle, in silence, in strategy. It wasn't about aggression, it was about presence without intrusion. He didn't need to be seen to be felt. Hades didn't need temples. He didn't need parades or praise or pageantry. He was felt in every funeral pyre, every burial mound, every whispered oath spoken over a grave. And when his name was spoken aloud, if it had to be, it was done with respect. Because even the gods didn't mock the one who ruled what waits for us all. Hades didn't rage, charm, seduce mortals, or hurl storms from above. He simply ruled, and that, in itself, made him different from almost every other Olympian. He was the god of the underworld, not of death itself, but of the place souls go when their time in the world ends. The Greeks were careful about that distinction. Death had a name of its own, Thanatos. Hades didn't reap lives, he received them. He didn't decide when people died, he decided what happened afterward. His realm was one of law, order, and permanence. Souls entered, and unless the gods intervened, and they rarely did, those souls stayed. Hades maintained the balance between the living and the dead. He made sure that no mortal could cheat death, and no shade could slip back into the world of the living without consequence. This wasn't cruelty, it was structure. It was duty. His personality reflected that. Hades was stern, unyielding. He didn't bend to emotion or impulse. He wasn't known for bursts of wrath like Zeus or bitter vengeance like Hera. He didn't charm like Apollo or deceive like Hermes. He was steady, often cold, sometimes distant, but never careless. In fact, he was one of the few gods who rarely acted out of pride. His decisions were deliberate. He didn't meddle in human affairs unless absolutely necessary, and when he did, it was with restraint. Even in myth, there are very few stories where Hades takes center stage. That silence is telling. He didn't seek attention. He had no need for it. Still, when he acted, he wasn't powerless. Hades held dominion over some of the deepest, most untouchable forces in existence. He possessed the helm of darkness, which made him invisible not just to mortals, but to gods. He had the bident, a symbol of his authority, which could command spirits and summon seismic force when needed. He ruled over oaths made in his name, and in Greek culture, breaking an oath sworn by Hades carried the weight of eternal consequence. He could summon and bind souls, raise the dead in spirit, though not in flesh, and call upon beings like the Erinyes or Hecate to enforce divine justice. But even a god has limits. Hades was bound to his realm. He rarely left the underworld. Not because he couldn't, but because he wouldn't. His presence in the world of the living was unsettling, even to mortals who worshipped the gods. Crops failed, animals panicked, people whispered. The world reacted to him like a body recognizing death walking in daylight. He wasn't welcome in Olympus either, not truly. He was part of the family, but not part of the fold. Worship of Hades was rare and discreet. His name wasn't etched into temples the way Zeus or Apollo's were. Instead, people honored him in the shadows, through burial rites, through offerings left at crossroads, through whispered prayers asking not for favor, but for peace. And that's the paradox of Hades. He ruled over the feared, the forgotten, the final, and yet he did it without cruelty, without ego, and without complaint. Not loved, not hated, just necessary. The Olympians didn't inherit their thrones. They took them. After being freed from Cronus, the 6 siblings didn't step into power peacefully. Their rise came through war, a brutal, decade-long conflict known as the Titanomachy. It was a battle between 2 generations of gods, the old guard, led by Cronus and the other Titans, and the new, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and their allies. This was no small rebellion. It was all-out cosmic upheaval. Mountains were torn apart, the earth cracked, the heavens shook, and in the middle of it all was Hades. He wasn't the loudest, he wasn't the most charismatic, but he was essential. During the war, the Cyclopes, ancient craftsmen imprisoned by Cronus, were freed by Zeus. In return, they forged 3 divine weapons, the thunderbolt for Zeus, the trident for Poseidon, and the helm of darkness for Hades. While Zeus led with thunder and Poseidon struck with waves and quakes, Hades fought a different kind of war, one of strategy and sabotage. Using his helm, he moved unseen through the battlefield. He infiltrated the Titans' camps. He disrupted enemy movements. He launched ambushes that came out of nowhere. His presence wasn't noticed until it was too late. He didn't fight for glory. He didn't deliver speeches or inspire armies. He just got results. The myths don't dwell on the moment Cronus fell, but they make one thing clear. The Titans were defeated, and the Olympians stood victorious. If you want to see my full video on the Titanomachy, check the video in the top right-hand corner or check the video description below. It was one of my first videos, but the story still holds up. It was then, after 10 years of war, that the world was divided. Zeus, as the leader, took the heavens. Poseidon claimed the sea, and Hades was granted dominion over the underworld. It's often said that Hades drew the short straw, that he was unlucky or even tricked, but that's a modern spin. In ancient Greek tradition, the division wasn't seen as punishment or reward. It was balance. Each realm had to be ruled, and someone had to rule over death. Hades didn't protest. He didn't demand the sky. He accepted the role that no one else wanted, and he made it his own. And so, while his brothers returned to the world above and built a kingdom of clouds and waves, Hades descended into the depths. No more battlefields, no more thunder. Only silence and a throne waiting in the dark. Hey everyone, just a quick intermission here. I wanted to say thank you for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. Did you know that over 80% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel? If you've enjoyed this content so far, it would be incredible if you could hit that subscribe button. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel grow and ensures that you won't miss any more of our fascinating stories we explore together. Also, if you're feeling generous, please give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share with anyone else who may enjoy it. Your support really does make a difference and keeps the content coming. Thanks again, and let's get back to the story. This is the story that defined Hades more than any other. And like most ancient myths, it's not as simple as it seems. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and Zeus, king of the gods. She was young, radiant, and deeply loved, especially by her mother. Demeter kept her close, sheltered, untouched by the chaos of Olympus or the desires of other gods. But Hades saw her. Whether it was love, longing, or the loneliness of his shadowed throne, he wanted her to be his queen. He didn't ask Demeter. He didn't court Persephone. He went to Zeus, Persephone's father, and got his approval in secret. Then, one day, as Persephone picked flowers in a field, the earth split open. From the chasm rose Hades in his black chariot, pulled by immortal horses. He seized her, vanished into the ground, and the world closed over them. It was sudden, shocking, and silent. Demeter searched the earth endlessly for her daughter. No one spoke, and no one helped. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Crops withered, fields died, famine spread. The goddess of the harvest had withdrawn her gifts, and humanity began to suffer. Eventually, Demeter learned the truth, and she was furious. She confronted Zeus, and when he didn't act, she threatened to destroy all life unless her daughter was returned. The balance of the world teetered on collapse, and finally, Zeus relented. But there was a problem. While in the underworld, Persephone had eaten 6 seeds of a pomegranate, a symbolic act that bound her to that realm. According to divine law, anyone who tasted the food of the dead could never fully leave. So, a compromise was struck. For part of the year, Persephone would return to her mother. The earth would bloom, crops would grow, warmth would return. But for the other part, she would descend back into the underworld as queen. And when she did, Demeter would mourn. The fields would fall silent. Winter would come. That was the cycle, life and death, growth and decay, spring and winter. The myth has been retold for centuries as a story of seasons, but underneath it is something more complicated. Some versions paint Hades as a villain, stealing an innocent girl. Others hint at something else, that Persephone grew into her role, claimed her crown, and chose to return. She wasn't just a captive, she became a force. As queen of the underworld, she wasn't submissive. She judged souls, issued commands, and ruled beside Hades with equal authority. No longer just the daughter of Demeter, she was her own goddess, split between worlds. And Hades, he was faithful to her. He didn't parade lovers. He didn't seek replacements. He shared his realm, his silence, his burden, his eternity, with her. The myth of Persephone and Hades isn't clean, it isn't romantic exactly, but it isn't one-dimensional either. It's a myth about transition, about growing up, about stepping into power, even when the path there is dark. And in the stillness of the underworld, two gods ruled together, not in chaos or cruelty, but in balance. There are few stories in Greek mythology as tragic, or as human, as the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus was no warrior, no king. He was a mortal, a poet, and a musician whose music could move even the stones to tears. He loved a woman named Eurydice, and she loved him back, but their time together was brief. On their wedding day, she was bitten by a serpent and died. Just like that, she was gone, taken from him by fate, pulled into the realm ruled by Hades and Persephone. Most mortals would have wept, accepted, moved on, but Orpheus refused. Armed with nothing but his lyre and his grief, he descended into the underworld, alive, something few had ever done. He crossed the rivers of the dead, faced Cerberus, braved the shadows, and when he finally stood before Hades and Persephone, he didn't beg. He played, and the underworld listened. Even the Furies, beings forged from vengeance, wept. Cerberus lay still. The rivers paused. And for a brief moment, even Hades, the unshaken king of the dead, was moved. Hades and Persephone granted him something no mortal had ever been given, a second chance. Eurydice would be returned to him. She would follow him out of the underworld. But there was one condition. He must walk ahead of her, and he must not look back, not once, until they both reach the world of the living. It seemed simple, and so he walked. Step by step, song by song, the path was long, dark, quiet. He heard nothing behind him, no breath, no footsteps, just silence. He doubted, he feared, and just before they reached the edge, just before the light broke through, he turned, and she vanished. Hades had kept his word, Orpheus had not. There were no second chances after that. Eurydice was lost forever. Orpheus returned to the world above alone. It's a story told often, in poetry, in music, in tragedy. But what it reveals about Hades is worth noting. He didn't mock Orpheus. He didn't punish him beyond the terms they had agreed to. He gave him a chance, rare, unheard of, divine. But Hades was not a god of compromise. He ruled a world of rules, of boundaries, of endings that could not be undone. And when Orpheus broke the one condition he had been given, Hades didn't lash out. He simply let the silence return. Because in his realm, promises matter, and nothing, not even love, is stronger than fate. Some men try to outwit death, but in the world of the gods, that never ends well. Sisyphus was the king of Corinth, a man so clever, so cunning, that even the gods grew wary of him. He lied, he cheated, he broke sacred laws, and most unforgivable of all, he tricked Thanatos, the personification of death. It began with a chain. Thanatos had been sent by Hades to claim Sisyphus's soul, but Sisyphus, always thinking 2 steps ahead, had other plans. He flattered Thanatos, distracted him, and then snapped iron shackles around him. For a time, death itself was bound. No one died. Battles raged, and soldiers fell, but they didn't pass on. Wounds didn't kill. Age didn't claim the old. The world groaned under the weight of souls that refused to leave it. Hades' realm fell silent, and he was furious. The underworld depends on flow, on balance. Souls must enter. Life must end for life to begin again. When that cycle is broken, even gods feel the strain. Eventually, Ares, the god of war, grew tired of battles without casualties. He found Thanatos, freed him, and personally dragged Sisyphus down to the underworld in chains. But the trickster wasn't finished yet. Before his death, Sisyphus had secretly instructed his wife not to bury his body or perform the proper funeral rites. When he arrived in the underworld, he played the part of the wronged husband. He told Hades and Persephone he had been sent there unfairly, without ritual, without respect, a soul caught between worlds. And incredibly, they believed him. They allowed him to return to the world of the living to correct the mistake. But once back, he refused to return. He resumed his life, defiant, smug, untouchable, at least for a while. When Hades finally reclaimed him, there would be no more games, no more tricks, no more chances. Sisyphus was condemned to an eternal punishment, one that matched the arrogance of his defiance. He was made to push a boulder up a steep hill, only for it to roll back down just before reaching the top, over and over, forever. No rest, no reward, no escape. That's how Hades handled betrayal, not with fire, not with torture, but with futility, a quiet, endless echo of consequence. Because Hades wasn't just the god of the dead. He was the guardian of order, of oaths, of limits that no mortal could break without cost. Sisyphus tried to beat death, and in the end it was death that beat him, not with cruelty, but with certainty. Heracles had done the impossible, 12 times to be exact, but his final labor would take him farther than any mortal had gone before, into the depths of the underworld. King Eurystheus, hoping to finally kill the demigod hero, assigned a task that no man could survive: bring back Cerberus, the monstrous three-headed hound of Hades. A guardian of the dead, a beast that let souls in, but never out. Most would have refused, but Heracles didn't. Armed with his lion-skin cloak and unshakable will, he made his descent, not as a spirit, not in disguise, but as a living man entering the realm of the dead. He passed the gates. He faced shades and terrors. He even encountered the ghost of Meleager, a fallen hero who would later play a part in introducing Heracles to his own future wife, Deianira. Eventually, he stood before Hades and Persephone. This moment says a lot about the Lord of the Dead. He didn't rage. He didn't strike Heracles down. He didn't bar the hero from returning. Instead, Hades listened. Heracles made his request, and Hades offered a deal. He could take Cerberus if he could subdue the beast with his bare hands. If Heracles was strong enough, the underworld would not stop him. And Heracles agreed. He found Cerberus at the gates of Tartarus, snarling, coiled, massive. Its 3 heads snapped and roared, its serpent tail lashing behind it. Most would have run. Heracles wrestled it into submission. He did not kill the beast. He didn't maim it. He simply endured it, and won. Cerberus was brought to the surface, where Eurystheus was so horrified that he begged Heracles to return it immediately. The hero did, and true to his word, Hades welcomed his guardian back without punishment or spite. It was one of the rare stories where Hades shows restraint, reason, and a willingness to honor strength and resolve, even from a mortal. He could have refused. He could have retaliated, but he didn't. Because in the underworld, rules mattered, and Heracles followed them. So Hades kept his word, not because he was weak, but because even in a world built on endings, some things, like honor, still mattered. Hades isn't known for passion. He doesn't chase lovers like Zeus or Poseidon. He doesn't burn with desire like Apollo or Ares. But buried deep in the myths, there are whispers, subtle, brief, and haunting, of 2 women who stirred something in him. The first was Minthe. She was a nymph who lived near the river Cocytus, a minor spirit by most standards, but beautiful and ambitious. In some versions of the myth, Minthe was a former lover of Hades, taken before he wed Persephone. In others, she attempted to seduce him afterward, believing herself more worthy of the underworld throne. Whichever version you follow, the outcome is the same. Persephone found out, and she didn't respond with words. She crushed Minthe underfoot, either literally, transforming her into a plant, or figuratively, reducing her to dust in Hades' court. But from that dust grew a fragrant herb, mint, sharp, bitter, and unforgettable. In ancient Greece, mint was used in funerary rites. It masked the scent of death, refreshed the air, and lingered in memory long after the ceremony, just like the myth. Then there was Leuce, another nymph, less confrontational, more tragic. She too caught Hades' attention. Unlike Minthe, Leuce didn't try to become queen. She was gentle, pale, and fleeting. When she died, either naturally or by descent into the underworld, Hades didn't let her fade like the other souls. He transformed her into a white poplar tree, the only one allowed to grow in the Elysian fields. Its silver leaves were said to shimmer in both directions, one light, one dark, representing the duality of the world above and below. It was also the tree Heracles crowned himself with after returning from the underworld, a symbol of triumph and remembrance. These stories don't portray Hades as a romantic. They don't turn him into a tragic lover or a desperate suitor, but they do reveal something rare in Greek mythology, a god who loved without domination. He didn't imprison these women. He didn't curse them. But when love ended, whether by jealousy, fate, or death, he let memory remain. Minthe became a scent. Leuce became a tree, both rooted in his realm, forever part of the landscape he ruled. Quiet, subtle, eternal, like Hades himself. Not every fool in Greek mythology was punished by Zeus. Some made the mistake of challenging Hades and learned why no one escapes his realm. Theseus and Pirithous were heroes, brave, bold, and wildly arrogant. After abducting Helen of Sparta when she was still a child, planning to make her Theseus's future bride, the two decided to take things even further. They would kidnap a goddess. Not just any goddess, Persephone, queen of the underworld. They convinced themselves it could be done. After all, they were demigods, sons of kings, champions of mortals. Who could stop them? They descended into the underworld with confidence, but Hades was already waiting. He welcomed them with open arms, offered them hospitality, a seat at his table, and when they sat, they were trapped, instantly. The moment they touched the chair of forgetfulness, their bodies froze, their minds dulled. They could not stand, they could not speak, they could not move. They were bound, not with chains, but with oblivion. Days passed, years. They were left in the underworld, half alive, fully aware of their mistake. Time crawled forward. Hades did not speak to them again. Eventually, Heracles descended into the underworld during his 12th labor. When he encountered Theseus, he recognized him and attempted to lift him from the cursed seat. Theseus rose, barely, though the earth still clung to him. Pirithous, however, could not be freed. Hades had claimed him, forever. This myth isn't long. It isn't filled with monsters or battles or divine wrath, but it says everything about Hades' character. He didn't strike down the intruders. He didn't scream or roar or summon fire. He simply waited, watched, and let them seal their own fate. Say the name Hades today, and most people picture a villain. Flaming hair, a silver tongue, a temper like fire. Disney's Hercules made him a fast-talking underworld con artist. Video games turn him into a demonic boss. In cartoons, comics, and movies, he's more devil than deity. But that version of Hades? It's not Greek mythology. It's modern invention, shaped by centuries of cultural drift, mistranslation, and Christian influence. First, let's get this clear. Hades is not the Greek version of Satan. He is not the god of hell. He does not torture souls or punish the wicked. That role, the punisher of the damned, belongs to Tartarus, a deep abyss in the underworld, and to entities like the Erinyes, or the judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Iacchus. Hades simply rules. He oversees the dead. He maintains the flow. He doesn't assign suffering. He ensures souls go where they're meant to. Over time, As Christianity spread through the Roman world, the name Hades, which originally referred to both the god and the realm, became a synonym for hell. That fusion distorted the original myth. The grim but balanced god of the dead slowly morphed into something darker, more sinister. And modern pop culture ran with it. From anime and comic books to animated films and action games, Hades is often cast as the villain, the god in the shadows, plotting, scheming, challenging the good gods of Olympus. But in the actual myths, Hades rarely shows interest in Olympus at all. He doesn't fight for power, he doesn't rebel, he doesn't even participate in the chaotic infighting of the other gods. He stays in his realm, he rules what others fear to face, and unlike many Olympians, he keeps his word. The Greeks didn't love him, but they didn't hate him either. They respected him. They feared him in the way people fear death itself, not because it's evil, but because it's inevitable. He was the god who saw what others didn't, who heard what others refused to acknowledge, who ruled without pride, without cruelty, and without need for praise. So the next time you see Hades portrayed with horns, fire, and a villain's smirk, remember, that's not a god. That's a caricature. Because the real Hades was so much more than that.